Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Habit Finder Power Session here on the Habit Finder Facebook page. Very excited to be with you today. There's a lot going on in the world right now. There are a lot of different things being discussed, a lot of different things pulling on our energy, neurologically, emotionally, physically. And I hope to be able to provide a safe place for you to come to and listen to some ideas, some insights. I want to be very careful today to not tell you how you're supposed to feel. I wanted to come here today to be very careful to not tell you what you're supposed to think. In fact, when I do get very direct, very in my what gets referred to as my pattern disruptor mode, oftentimes it's not to get you to think what I'm trying to get you to think. It's just to get you to think differently from how you're currently thinking. I think that's far more valuable than trying to get you to think a certain way. If I can just teach you to challenge the way you currently think at all times, it's going to serve you very well. So we're going to cover some sensitive, some tender topics today. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on right now in the world, but hopefully from a very constructive and very insightful position to be able to serve you. So with that, we're going to jump right in. And if there's someone you think that with all this noise, all this energy going on right now in the world could really benefit from just being able to talk through some things in a non-political way, talk through some things in a non-emotionally driven way, but talk through some things from an elevated position that will hopefully give as many of you as possible to grab onto something to help you make a little bit more sense of where you stand right now, make a little bit more sense of what you're feeling right now. Then this will have been a successful power session. So if you know anyone that would be served by that, tag them in the comments, share this out in Facebook. Let's get an opportunity to spread a message that we can use right now and forever. That can sometimes require some counterintuitive perspectives. Counterintuitive being we think we should be doing this, but that's not actually what's going to serve us. So let's dive in. Let's go ahead and kick the tires and light the fires and get this thing started. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to this week's power session here on the Habit Finder page. We're excited to be with you. I am your host, Paul Blanchard, president of Habit Finder. Hello from Canada, North Carolina. We got the coasts. We got the countries. This is awesome. So excited to have you guys here. We're going to be talking about some things going on right now in the world. I don't know if you've heard, okay? No, I guarantee that you have. You might be the person taking the position of just staying off social media right now, other than jumping on to listen to me. Thank you for that. You might be taking the position of not watching any news right now, or you may be totally enveloped in it and feeling the drain or the pokes and the prods of what's going on right now, and I want to take it head on. Now, I have Amy's here from England, doing some amazing things out there. Amy's one of our Habit Finder coaches. So awesome. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the world right now, but not from a telling you how you're supposed to feel, not from a telling you what you're supposed to think, not from a political standpoint, although politics are very heightened right now. There are many agendas trying to hog this platform of what's going on in the world right now, okay? There are many people doing a lot of things that are not serving right now. And I don't want to come in here. I'm not coming on here to condemn anyone. I'm not coming on here to tell anyone and try to point out the flaws and what you're thinking. I just want to point out some patterns. I want to point out some things you want to consider in the stance that you do take or the stance that you don't take. And just really understanding what's going on here from a human perspective, because that's what we always do at Habit Finder. We talk about business, we talk about sales, we talk about culture and leadership and all kinds of different things, strategy and marketing, but we talk about it from a human perspective because that's what matters. We talk about it from how we all operate on a neurological level. We talk about how we have our true voice in our mind. We have our unhealthy habits of thinking voice in our mind. And, depending on your belief system, we have God's voice in our mind or some additional higher power of nature or whatever you connect to. And working through those voices and those influences, here's the challenge. They all sound like us. They all sound like us. So it can be tough to work through some of those things, which is why we constantly in here want to be shaking up the snow globe, being able to disrupt our patterns. As I said right before we formally kicked off the show today, I'm not as concerned about getting you to think a certain way as I am about challenging the way you currently think. I don't care if you think the way that I do, but I definitely care if you challenge the way you think the way that I do. I spent this weekend in light of current situations and tensions and things going on, playing mental and emotional gymnastics with myself and really getting an opportunity to process some things. Now, in terms of shaking the snow globe, I would be remiss to not show this. One of my dearest friends sent me this. It is a snow globe with a picture in it representative of our mindset. Okay. And getting the opportunity to actually shake this and keep this here on my desk is one of my favorite things that I've received as a gift in a long time, as a physical representation of what I seek to do as a coach and as a guide every day with my clients and my family and those that I care about. So today we're talking about to stop looking for answers. There's a lot of people looking for answers, and there's a lot of people right now pushing the agenda of their answers. And there's some hard truths that I want to talk about, okay? And please, I would ask that we don't get political, that we don't get overly opinionated in the comments, okay? What I don't want this to be is a platform for anyone to come on here and, feel that this is a great place for them to be a social justice warrior, because that's not why I'm coming here today. And I would hope that you would honor and respect that for yourselves as well. I have no judgments about your personal opinions about what's going on, wherever they might be. And for reasons that will be very clear as we go through this today, because as soon as we start judging other people, we expose ourselves to being judged. And that's not a reason to not do it, but that is a reason to be very conscious and very aware in terms of how you do it and when you do it and with whom and why. And I see a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, doing a lot of things that I could easily pick apart. And I could jump on, podcasts and talk shows and whatever and be very polarizing and make very good arguments. I thought I was going to grow up and be a lawyer, but then I realized how much study that took and how much reading that took, and that's not really my thing. So I figured I'd be an actor so I could be a lawyer on TV and in movies so I could just make the arguments, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to argue because I felt like I had amazing ability to grab mental and emotional artillery to make incredible arguments, which is a blessing, but in a lot of times when you're not aware of the ramifications of that gift, a tremendous curse. And I've definitely spent plenty of time in my professional and personal life seeing the collateral damage of having a gift like that. So I'm not on here to argue with anyone. I'm not on here to say this movement matters, this movement doesn't. Here's the flaws in this and that. We're talking on a human level today, okay? And what I want to offer you instead of answers is something that actually works, because answers don't work. It's very important to understand that answers and solutions are two different things. Answers and solutions are two different things. Answers don't work. Answers can guide us to solutions, okay? But we want to be careful because answers are passive. Answers are presentational. Solutions take work. Solutions are messy. Solutions have no linear process. It takes calibration and awareness and work and consistency. Answers, you can package things up nice and sew them on a pillow, but they aren't going to change anything. And you got a lot of people looking for answers right now. You got a lot of people willing to give those answers. But one of the things that I hope that we can take away from our own lives, regardless of what's going on right now, okay? It is never, the number one solution to anything has never not been take care of yourself and take care of those around you. Because if we all did that, guess what happens? We take care of the world, okay? So, but that doesn't mean we don't think bigger, we don't think globally. That I'm not saying you're not be socially responsible. I'm just saying I'm asking you and pleading that if you take anything away from today, that it is to take a look at what's right in your own backyard and what's right around you, in addition to the perspectives. Use your perspectives of the outside world to learn a little bit more about what you are and are not doing in your own personal world, okay? not to not do those things, not to not protest or to not march or to not do anything, but use your perspective on those things to examine your own inner circle here. That's what I'm asking. Because as we seek for answers, we want to understand, number one, answers are not solutions, and solutions are messy. But solutions come from one thing. The only way you can calibrate solutions, the only way you can implement solutions is through discussion. And that's what I'm asking people to do. Somewhere along the way, politically, socially, we lost collectively, in aggregate, the ability to discuss, the ability to have discussions and have them be discussions. So rather than seek answers, I would ask that you seek discussions. Guess what? Discussions don't enjoy. Discussions don't enjoy an agenda that you're married to, like it is genetically and physiologically wired into you. Okay? I'm not saying you can't have agendas, but be very aware of agendas that are neurologically wired into you, that you have emotional attachment to at a very deep physiological level. Okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we will want to be seeking discussions. Discussions are conversations and connections. They are opportunities to hear someone else's point of view without it being an attack on yours. And sometimes we'll use the argument of, hey, I should be able to share an opinion without you feeling like it's an attack as an attack. So what's important about discussions, okay, and this is a critical fundamental piece. The moment you point out someone else's ignorance, in anything, you have exposed your own. It's impossible not to. It is impossible to have a strong opinion without pointing out the flaws in that opinion. It is impossible to have a strong idea without pointing out the flaws in that idea. But that's the beauty of a discussion. So we can work through those things if we're showing up to actually listen to each other. But we'll want to understand the hypocrisy of being human. Okay, and I don't mean that as an indictment. I mean it's one of the most beautiful things that can keep us in check if we're willing to listen. We are all hypocritical, every one of us. We are all both selfless, and selfish at the same time. How aware are we of the calibration? We are all opinionated and ignorant and bigoted and prejudiced and biased. We're all of those things. How aware are we of where we stand and what we're observing and the ability to go and discuss? Discussions help us see things in our own opinions, in our own conversations that we couldn't possibly see in ourselves, like the color of your eyes. Without a mirror, you would never be able to know the color of your eyes. Without being able to ask someone else to tell you and indicate what the color of your eyes are, there is no way that a person isolated on their own without a specific tool or the help of another person would ever be able to discover more about themselves. And that's what discussion provides. But understand the catch-22 of discussions, that as soon as you point out someone else's ignorance, you are exposing and making your own vulnerable. Now, that is not a recommendation to not point it out. It is a recommendation to be very aware, to be very loving, very sensitive in the way that you do it. Some of us come raging out, pointing out other people's ignorance, and I am fighting the desire to point out very specific things that I've heard about from other people over the weekend of some of the events that are occurring around the world now, in protest of things that are going on. But I want to be really careful I don't want to call anyone out in this particular situation. But if you're sitting there watching things on the news and going, I can't believe that, well, guess what you just did? You just exposed your own ignorance. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have opinions, but just understand, I love the boxing analogy. Any great fighter knows that the best time to punch is when the other person is punching. That it's a counter punch, because it is impossible to punch someone else without exposing myself to a counter punch. Okay? There are boxers that will spend time with their gloves taped to their face because it is just natural as I go to punch to go like this. I drop this hand to get leverage for this one. Okay? It is only human nature. It is only natural that when we punch, when we opinionate, when we pontificate, when we point out, when we indict, when we judge, we expose our own judgment. When we point out bias, we expose our own bias. It's impossible not to. I'm not sharing that with you as a reason to not point it out, but to be able to not get flustered when someone points it out back to you. Okay? And to not feel the need to do some things that I really want to focus on today. And that's if we are going to opt for discussion rather than looking for answers and throwing up our answers on everybody else, and oftentimes only in very safe places where we feel like the answer won't get thrown back on us, and which I've done. I've had some open discussions with just a couple of people that I trust thoroughly as a safe place to be able to talk through, and I've even been talking through it, and I said, yeah, but what about, and then as soon as I said, and even as I say that, I hate the way that sounds. So it was actually really enlightening and really fun to have a safe person, a couple of safe people to be able to talk to point out the flaws in my own arguments. Because as soon as we have some moral high ground, we're setting ourselves up for falling off of it. Okay. And we're always going to be able to have argument, always able to be able to have debate when we're looking for answers. But if we can have discussion, we can actually listen to each other. And I don't think anyone said it quite as well as Daryl Davis. I posted this on Instagram the other day. Daryl Davis, I was watching an interview he did with Joe Rogan. And I mean, here's a jazz musician, a very popular musician who decided to go around and start, a black man, decided to start going around and meeting with members of the KKK. And his only agenda was just to listen, to have discussion, not to point out to them how wrong they were and whatever else, just to have discussion. And he said it beautifully. He said, we spend way too much time in this country talking about the other person, talking at the other person, talking past the other person. Why not spend a little time talking with the other person? Now, that sounds beautiful to say that, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to be that aware of our own prejudice, to be that aware of our own bias, of our own bigotry, of our own short-sightedness. It is hard to do. But if we understand that when we send a punch, we're opening ourselves to receiving one, it's almost like Neo in the Matrix, where we can see the bullets coming and we can put our hand up and examine the bullets. Everyone's looking for the answer to stop the shooting, to stop the hate, to stop it's not going to stop. It's human element, okay? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't discuss it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't shed light on it. Right now, the best thing that's happening is that conversations are happening. Even if they're happening destructively, the conversations are happening. And that's got to start. We need engagement. We need conversation. We need discussion, not just about what's being discussed right now in this country and in this world, but around everything, all kinds of things. And it can be hard to take something this targeted, this volatile, this difficult, this sensitive, and use it as a laboratory to be able to figure out how to have discussions, but it's a beautiful opportunity to do so. Be careful not stand on your high horse. It's the quickest way to get knocked off of it, okay? It doesn't mean you need to be ambiguous. It doesn't mean you need to be fickle and believing what everyone says just because they make a good conversation about it. But we will want to learn the skills of discussing, and there is an opposition to doing this that I talked about on a call yesterday for our shifters, for people that are in our inner circle of Habit Finder, where they're part of our Shift group, which is an online course and amazing opportunity to be able to get a lot more targeted stuff from us, a lot more focused progression at a very affordable rate. But I was talking about an opposition that I don't think gets talked about enough, okay? And it is the difference between loving and listening and needing and proving. So if we're going to have discussions, if we're going to surrender looking for answers, because answers, just like talk, is cheap, okay? But we're going to have discussion. And sometimes that discussion is going to be heated. Sometimes that discussion is going to be messy. Sometimes that discussion is going to leave us feeling icky or pissed off. But we're going to keep having the discussions. We're going to learn to have these discussions, these messy, heated, angry, difficult discussions. But we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that they don't lead to actual physical destruction as best as we can, especially the destruction of human life, which is part of the reason these discussions are happening, the biggest reason these discussions are happening. And that cannot be understated. that cannot be justified, that cannot be diminished. That is a human life, regardless. But what I want to open ourselves and our minds up to is the conversation around the difference between loving and listening, which is what we'll want to do in a discussion. Okay, because love, and I'm talking about agape love, which we've talked about on here, which is a love that is not emotionally driven. It is a love that is driven by awareness and clarity, which is not necessarily a warm, fuzzy blanket. It's not necessarily being a pushover and turn the other cheek. The highest level of love is clarity and accuracy. And part of pursuing that kind of love is realizing that we're never going to have it perfectly. We're never going to completely embody agape love. It's going to be like the North Star that the mariners used in the ocean. They never expected to actually pull up on its shores, but if they could look up as often as possible for clarity, for direction, they would be able to recalibrate. None of us are going to be on this perfect linear path in this life when it comes to love, when it comes to anything. And so we'll want to have guidelines. We'll want to have our North Stars, like agape love, to show up with clarity and accuracy. And as soon as you think you've got it totally right, that's when you've started going the wrong direction. As soon as a mariner thought, oh yeah, we're totally headed on the right course, their confidence lowers their awareness, okay, and puts them into a routine that then they look up and go, oh geez, we got off. How did that happen? I was so confident we were on the right track from the last time we looked. Well, therein we find that it's not the confidence of I don't need the North Star anymore. In fact, that's where confidence gets the best of us. It's the confidence that we know it's there, so we find the consistency of looking at it consistently that makes the difference in our lives. So we'll want to bring that kind of love into the conversation. We'll want to be quicker to listen than to tell, okay? And to be able to listen from an elevated position. It's the difference between watching a car chase on TV or in a movie and actually being in one. Too many of us are trying to have discussions and we get sucked into the car chase. I mean, just think about physiologically the difference between sitting in a movie theater and watching a car chase and then actually being sucked into that car with bullets flying by you and skidding around corners and feeling like you're going to flip over and whatever else. You're going to have a very different physiological experience being in it than observing it. So if we're going to have healthier discussions, we'll want to observe it, not because we're checked out, but because we have elevated our consciousness and our awareness. We're looking for a 360-degree view of what we have to share. And when in a discussion with someone else who is also professing the same desires, we can be able to help work through things with each other. But if you're talking to but that doesn't mean you should just discuss things with people that are safe. Just understand that if you're going to go into a discussion with someone who may not feel the same way, that is in the car chase, that we still choose to observe it. No matter how many arrows they sling, no matter how many strong opinions they feel, because more often than not, the person doesn't have someone safe they can talk to, or they don't feel like they have anywhere else that they could express it. And so we want to give them an opportunity, invite them to be able to discuss with us, whether it's what's currently going on in the world or struggles that your kids are having because a friend doesn't want to play with them anymore. All of these things are important. And all of them require us to be able to have and be open to discussion that has the objective to love, agape love, clarity and accuracy, and to listen. The flip side of that is to have discussions where we need things and we're trying to prove things. That's where discussions get destructive. Okay? I need your approval, or I need you to see it the way I do. As soon as need infiltrates any relationship, you're having an uphill battle you don't want to have. I want to say you're screwed, but that's a little total. That's a little absolute, and we want to avoid absolutes in any discussion. But you are going to make things a lot harder than they need to be. Think about the times in your closest relationship when you needed your spouse versus you loved your spouse. Oftentimes when we need something, we want to justify it as, I need this because I love them. However, the need is leading the way, not the love. And so that's an energy that comes from desperation. It is impossible to have a need without having some degree of desperation. The greater level of desperation, the greater level of destruction that need creates. Like right now, there's a lot of people who don't feel like they need to have a voice in this, but they watch other people's voices and they get pissed off. I can't believe they're doing that. I can't believe they say that. I can't believe they think that. You are expressing a need for them to validate you on some level. a need for them to believe what you believe. And that puts you in the least qualified position to be able to have a discussion. Okay, like with your spouse, when you need something from them that you're not aware of the need, okay? You definitely want to have discussions with your spouse when you need something, but do it knowing you are bringing a level of desperation and a level of need to the conversation so you can solicit them to help you work through that need, rather than playing guess what I'm thinking and you need to read my mind and I'm going to start withholding and withdrawing love and affection or patience or other services to you until you figure this out, which is too often what happens to us when we need something from the other person. So let us, try not to go into discussions or relationships with a need, but rather with love. And if there is a need, discuss the need with love and a desire to listen, because that desperation is going to distort what you're trying to get across, and it's going to make the situation worse 99 times out of 100. Okay? The other one is to prove, which comes from the need. We need to prove to someone they're wrong. We need to prove to someone that what we think is better. And it's happening so much when people don't think that's where they're coming from. But it is. Okay? If someone saying something that they feel strongly about on social media or on the news or whatever irks you, it really sets you off. But even if you don't do anything about it, what that is doing is pointing out a need you have or something you need to prove. And both are going to be destructive in discussions. You'll feel them. You'll feel them when you get into conversations, when you have a hard time listening to someone, or you feel the need to, I'm battling with myself to not use a particular example, but it makes the point that I'm trying to make really clear. But I'm not going to do it, okay? Because I made a commitment to not be political on this platform, and it's not pointing it out from a political standpoint, but I think it's impossible to mention without people taking it politically. But what I will say, if someone says that something matters and you try to say that everything matters, okay, I've already let it out of the bag, but hey, I've got my director here going, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Because I can see her in the production room. You are exposing a need. Because if we really are okay, if we really are bringing love and listening to the conversation, we should be in the best possible position to hear things we don't agree with without needing to fight them, because that comes from need improving. Now, that doesn't mean, please hear this clearly, that doesn't mean that your perspective doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the idea you're trying to get across doesn't matter, but it means that if you feel that pull, that's the time to pump the brakes and go, I'm not in the best position to deliver this message. I'm not in the best position to deliver this message right now. And the more of a pull you feel, the more important the message may be, but the more important it would be for you to deploy the principles of intrinsic validation, of finding good in other people's ideas so that you can bring their walls down and be able to share something with them. Like Daryl Davis, who doesn't go and meet with people in the KKK going, okay, within an hour, I'm hoping to get this person to defect. No, there's no timeline. There's no agenda for that. It's just understanding that when you do have discussion with love and listening, that you shed light on things, you increase knowledge and awareness. And with higher levels of knowledge and awareness and activity, the more likely we all as human beings are to align for the better good of each other. So, does he feel the need to get people out of the KKK? Sure, he absolutely does. But when he's in that discussion, he cannot let that need dictate the discussion. Otherwise, it will sabotage it every time. That's the counterintuitive that I'm talking about. That if you really feel strongly about something, you feel like that is good, solid moral ground to stand on, that should mean you should be more stable than anyone else to have the discussion. You are in the best possible position to listen. But if you feel yourself pulled into combative conversation, pulled into needing to point out their ignorance and therefore exposing your own, that's not the best time for you to be on offense. It's not the best time for you to be able to share your ideas. But your ideas matter. Your perspective matters. I want you to honor them by focusing on the other person to bring their walls down, to love and listen first, so that eventually with the right people, because it's not going to work with everyone, you can get to a position where they can have a healthy discussion with you as well. But forcing it, needing something from them. And a lot of times, again, those are needs that we don't realize we have. And especially needing to prove something to them puts you in the least qualified position to do it. And it's really, really hard, because this need to be right, this systemic complex that we all have on some level, we just handle it differently and interact differently, is built into our nervous system. So we're talking about these emotional charges that we've all been feeling over the last week or two, or other areas of our life. This is nothing new on a systemic level. It's just new content, new context. Very relevant, very important context indeed. But the more irked we feel, the more triggered we feel, we'll want to understand that that's not the time to engage. That's the time to love and to listen. And understand, loving and listening applies both to the person you're having a discussion with and the person you're always having a discussion with. You're always discussing with yourself. How are you doing in loving and listening to you? Because the better you love and listen to you, the better you can love and listen to others. And the more you challenge yourself to love and listen to others, the better you'll love and listen to yourself. It's a beautiful, symbiotic, reciprocal relationship. So rather than seeking answers, let's seek discussions. That couldn't be more true today than any time, but it is true every day, not just now. And let's do that by embracing love, that clarity, that accuracy, and listening, and surrendering and becoming more aware of the need we have in relationships and socially and everything else, and especially the need to prove something, because that's usually the most destructive and ineffective way to prove your point, is to try and prove it rather than to be able to discuss, bring someone's wall down, ask for permission, and share, the way we teach in intrinsic validation, the way we teach executives of major companies, the way we teach youth that we work with, the way we teach hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs. Okay? Again, I'm not here to tell you how to feel right now, because there's a lot of things to feel, and you shouldn't bury or suppress any of them. You should observe them. You should experience them. But pay attention to the narratives, pay attention to the need driven by some form of desperation to prove ourselves or prove our point or be enough or be accepted or whatever it might be, that is a natural makeup for us as human beings, and allow us to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more 360 degrees in what we're doing. Not to be silent, okay, but not to be outspoken either, but to be able to be civil, to be able to be in discussions that won't always feel civil. It's okay. When we're talking about tough things, it's going to be tough discussions. But if we can lean more to loving and listening rather than needing and proving, we might just make a little more marginal improvement. And that's all we get in this life. We've got a brain that wants all or nothing, but the realities of life is marginal improvements. And just a little bit of an improvement can feel night and day to where you're currently at. So when your brain is trying to beat you down, trying to get you convinced that your life is hopeless, that your business is never going to work, that your kids are never going to listen, these absolutes, just remember that a complete breath of fresh air is just a little margin away, not 180 degrees away. Okay? Thanks so much for being on here today. Thanks for listening. Again, I don't profess to be the expert on the challenges going on right now in the world and how to be able to solve them specifically. But I do know a little bit about some things that could probably improve it. And if we can go around looking to improve our own inner circles, our own relationships, and then when we are interacting on a global level on what's going on today in the world, do so with love and listening first, and pay close attention to when needing and proving starts to get in, because it will distort even the best of perspectives. Okay? Much love. I realize who I am. I certainly realize who I'm not. And I don't profess to be some incredible activist who knows all about everything that's going on right now. I'm not. I'm just not. But I hope to be someone that can connect with people and can listen to people and can hear things from all sides without the need or the proving fogging my own vision to be able to have discussions and connect and listen and love. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Hope to see you back here next time for our next power session. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Go to habitfinder.com, whatever you need in any way that we can serve you. Take care. Bye-bye.